The flute scene. I think we're missing the point of this entirely, and here's why. Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie, and today I'm back to talk about a movie rather than talk about a DVD box set or Blu-ray or whatever. Because there's a movie which I saw a while back, which has really got my mind worked up. So for today I thought I would do a bit of a rant and a bit of a theory decomposition in regards to the Alien franchise, and more specifically talking about the new movie Alien Covenant and how it connects to the movie Prometheus and what will eventually happen in the upcoming third installment of the, you know, quote-unquote new trilogy, so to speak. So, first I just want to say that when I saw Alien Covenant in theaters, I thought it was entertaining and I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't like, you know, mind blown, but it sort of, it gave me a feeling which I didn't really have after Prometheus, because with Prometheus, which I also saw in theaters, I felt that, you know, you watched Prometheus and you thought that it was going to be like this thing that sort of connected everything and a bridge to the original Alien movie with like the Space Jockey scene from the original, and it didn't. So, major spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the Alien movies, or if you haven't seen Prometheus or Alien Covenant, I'd advise you not to continue watching this clip, because I will not be giving any more spoiler alerts, okay? You better have seen the movies if you're watching this, otherwise you're gonna be really pissed that I told you a bunch of stuff. So, with that out of the way, let's just let the theories fly. Like I said, when I first saw Prometheus, it felt like it just raised a bunch of questions. Like, you didn't get any answers, there was just a big confusion as to like, what is the black goo? Who is the space jockey? And when we came to the end of the movie, it was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. We want to make a puzzle and we get like a bunch of these jigsaw pieces, and then when the movie ends we sort of realize that, wait a minute, this isn't even a full puzzle, and it's not even a puzzle of the thing that's on the box. So it's like nothing really came out the way it was supposed to be, and at least for me I thought that Prometheus was, you know, it's got its moments, but overall it just created a big bowl of confusing mess that you don't really know what to do with. However, when I finished watching Alien Covenant, I felt that some of the loose threads in Prometheus had been answered. I think that Alien Covenant sort of did the thing that we didn't take away from Prometheus. It sort of connected the two films, and it sort of also gave the hope for a viewer like myself who wants to believe in this franchise that with a new installment, you know, there's Prometheus and then there's Alien Covenant, and we are waiting for a third installment they have sort of said will be coming out, and I'm hoping that the third installment will be the thing that bridges the gap between Prometheus, Alien Covenant, third installment, and then the original Alien film, and that this will create a consistent timeline. You know, that's what we've been wanting from day one. So, I think that Alien Covenant sort of gave us that idea that, you know, it's possible. There are a lot of questions with Alien Covenant, and I'm not getting into all of them, but now I would like to touch some stuff from Alien Covenant that have really gotten my mind working, because when I saw it in the cinemas, I sort of felt like, you know, it's good. It's a lot of questions and I'm not really sure what they're doing, but hopefully it'll be alright. But then, all of a sudden, something hit me. There's a specific scene in Alien Covenant, which, when I watched it in the theaters, it made no sense. It got a bunch of laughs, even from me, because I think it's like, what the hell are they doing? And I am, of course, talking about the infamous flute scene between the androids David and Walter, both played by Michael Fassbender. Very strange scene. Now, this has all sort of gay undertones. There's like the famous line, you know, I'll do the fingering, which is hilarious. You know, I think that's also part of why the scene is overlooked, is maybe not the right word, but I think that the flute scene is the key scene. I think that a lot of people have overlooked the scene because it is strange and it is funny and it's just so weird that people just go, what the fuck are they doing? And, you know, laugh it off and don't really pay attention to what's actually going on. Before we get into why the flute scene is so pivotal, I want to talk about probably the biggest mystery and the big question that everybody wants answered since the original Alien film. Who the fuck is the Space Jockey. The Space Jockey is the guy who supposedly flies the alien ship in the original Alien movie. You see him sitting in this big weirdo space chair. You know, you sort of think that it's a creature from another world because he looks so weird, but as we learn in Prometheus, it is in fact something called an engineer, presumably. It's in any case an engineer ship. And the engineers are these, you know, sort of prehistoric creatures who presumably engineered humans. You've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. However, even with Alien Covenant and with Prometheus, we still have no clue as to who the original Space Jockey is. And I think that this is also a key. I thought we would just try to decipher and try and figure out who the Space Jockey is. Because there are any number of options for this, but they might not be as many as you think. Okay, so the Space Jockey has a chest burster. Back in the original film, we knew nothing. So then it was like, okay, it probably came from an alien planet. But then, with the information that we've learned in Prometheus and later in Alien Covenant, we now know that the alien egg, and this is important, the alien egg is not a product of natural evolution. This is something that David, the quote-unquote evil android who survived Prometheus and ended up on the home world, you know, making experiments and whatnot. He specifically says, you know, he has created the perfect organism. He has created the alien egg. This is important for a couple of reasons. First of all, it means that the derelict ship in the original Alien film can only come from the home world where David has been working on his experiments. Because as you remember, the ship is full of the alien eggs. This means that the ship has to come from this point in time and from this planet in particular. We were led to believe that, you know, with the whole marketing campaign of Prometheus and whatnot, we were sort of made to think that the original derelict ship in Alien was the same ship that we see in trailers for Prometheus and whatnot. We now know that it's not. What we do know from Prometheus is that there are actually a large number of ships like this. We do see Shaw, played by Noomi Rapace, and David, at the end of Prometheus, they travel, you know, in search for the homeworld. So, you know, there are any number of sort of sleeping ships, so to speak, on the planet where the Prometheus, David specifically tells us this, you know, there's any number of ships and he can pilot them and whatnot. Also, I think that it's interesting, any of these ships could presumably have traveled to LV-426, the planet that we first see in the original Alien film. However, there's a lot of options which don't work, because who has access to one of these ships, like the original derelict ships, ships of that design? First of all, it could be an escaped engineer. And I'm gonna get back to that, because David says that he has experimented sort of creating the perfect organism with the egg and whatnot. And from what I understand, you know, the scene we see where the egg actually attacks one of the crew members in Alien Covenant, I don't think this is the first time. It feels like he has sort of worked through this process. I'm thinking maybe he has experimented on surviving engineers from when he first came to the planet. Maybe the engineer escapes, gets onto another ship. I mean, there's gotta be a lot of ships. It's their home world, so I figured there's probably a lot of ships. So let's say an engineer escapes, he is infected, or he has, like, you know, he has a chest burst in him, tries to escape, the thing comes out, and, you know, there you have it. But that's also the thing, like, then you're thinking, well, why are there so many eggs there? Why is there, the whole ship is full of eggs. Why would an engineer take a ship full of eggs that David has created and fly off, you know? I suppose there are reasons why that could have happened, but I'd like to think that the alien eggs on the original derelict ship that we see in the original Alien film, I don't think those are part of the cargo. Because, you know, when we first saw the Alien film, we didn't know. There was no backstory, we didn't know where the eggs came from. We just assumed, or at least I did, like they're part of this cargo, that the Space Jockey is hauling somewhere, something goes wrong, he crashes, the eggs are there, sort of like, you know, it's just cargo left behind. But I think, as they say in Aliens, where are all these eggs coming from? Who is laying these eggs? And then it turns out it's the alien queen. I think that the alien eggs that are in the ship, it's not like, you know, somebody just took a U-Haul kind of ship and brought a bunch of eggs to this planet. I think that Space Jockey, whoever he is, has a chest burster, is an alien queen. This is also important because David has engineered the chest burster and the egg. I mean, obviously there are chest burster scenes, but the modern day chest burster is something that came from that point in time, so it would have to be close to that to be so resembling and whatnot. So, the Space Jockey flies presumably from the homeworld, because that's where David has engineered the egg. And then he comes to LV-426, crashes there, Chessbird comes out, it's an alien queen, the alien queen starts laying eggs, and she's lurking around there for whatever number of years, but we don't actually see her. I mean, she's there during the first Alien film, but we don't actually see her. She first makes an appearance in Aliens, but I don't think she's been there all the time. That's why there are so many eggs. Maybe she's in hiding. So it's a lone space jockey who is infected. Isn't an infected engineer, if we go with that theory. Well, it's definitely possible. I think it might be the most probable. This also means that the whole sort of thing leading up to the original Alien film is a story we haven't even seen. You know, it's a separate journey which will not be part of the current storyline. With the ending of Alien Covenant, the crew is set out for their colony homeworld. I was sort of speculating and thinking, okay, is this the same colony that that sort of becomes LV-426, that colony? But I realized at the same time, no, this doesn't work for a number of reasons. First of all, because it's an alien ship that's crashed there. So if an alien ship crashes on the colony, and the colony is the same colony as the one which the Alien Covenant crew is going to, then why are they at the same place? I mean, David, posing as Walter, is traveling with the crew at the end of Alien Covenant. I mean, this can't be the same colony, because where did the alien ship come from? And why did it end up at the same colony that colonists are already going to, with David posing as Walter? I mean, the ship has to get there, and it's just weird coincidence that they would arrive at the same place. Because then you sort of have to think, okay, so it makes no sense. The only explanation would be, like, the upcoming film is all about David sort of orchestrating a big thing at a colony that we don't know about, and then somehow makes it, makes a return trip where it's doing the experiments, and sort of continuous experiments. I don't know, it just seems very far-fetched going back and forth. Colonists and David posing as Walter. I think that's a separate story which we're just letting go now. We will obviously know what happens in the upcoming film, because otherwise it would be like, okay, very weird. But I don't think that has anything to do with the bridging to the original Alien film and the derelict ship. I think that's a separate story. Let's just go back to thinking, so who has access to an alien ship like this and could potentially crash at LV-426? Let's say that the alien ship actually doesn't come from the homeworld. Let's say that it comes from the planet we see in Prometheus. There's a bunch of sleeping ships there, which also have sleeping engineers. I mean, we see in the ship that they actually find in Prometheus has like engineers there in hypersleep. So I'm gonna assume there are engineers in hypersleep in all the ships on this planet. There's potentially all kinds of ships going in all kinds of directions. The only problem with this is that why would they be infected? Well, I mean, there's black goo and stuff, and I suppose that, they could get infected through some sort of side story or whatever. And I also want to mention the fact that there's a lot of talk, and there's a sort of popular theory that Vickers, played by Charlize Theron, that she is in fact an android. There's a lot of things to suggest this. Let's say she is an android, or not. In any case, we don't actually see her die. I mean, we see her presumably getting crushed. It looks like she gets crushed when the alien ship sort of crashes on top of her. It rolls and it's like, black screen, she screams and whatnot. However, when the ship has sort of rolled over her, it starts to tip over. The fact that it tips over means that Vickers only under there for a very small time. Now, I'm not saying you would survive this, but it's a movie. And let's assume that she is an android, making her strong, she can survive stuff, there's like a cavity or she gets pushed down into the earth or whatever. Let's say that she does survive. The ship tips over, she's now free. If she's an android, then she can survive on this planet for any number of years, or at least longer than a human. She finds an alien ship, she flies away. Then again, why is she infected? I don't know why I'm bringing this part into the story. Like, that's just the thing. Even if somehow an engineer could get infected, or, if Vickers could get infected and escape from this planet, I don't think it's particularly plausible, because, like I mentioned before, the alien egg is a construction that David has created. And he hasn't done this on the Prometheus planet. He's done this on the homeworld planet. Meaning it's late in the story, the ship probably doesn't come from the Prometheus planet. Let's skip that idea and move over to the homeworld, where David is experimenting with the eggs. Let's say that that's where the ship comes from. So, who the fuck could be driving from that planet? Let's say that it's like an escaped engineer. One of David's many sort of experimenting processes. He infects an engineer with a experimental alien queen prototype. It flies off, thinking it's safe. It crashes on LV-426, and there you have it. Quite possible, because I'm thinking, you know, the engineers are not all dead. It's an entire planet, even with like the whole David's and Shaw's arrival on the home world and how they let out the black goo, which presumably consumes everything. It's a fucking planet. It's not gonna consume everything. It might consume like the main city, like the Citadel or whatever. It can't spread the whole planet. I'm thinking, you know, there's probably other cities. Once the sort of initial infestation or whatever has died down, I'm sure there are engineers coming to visit the city, coming into contact with David, whether he experiments or infects. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's a possibility that somebody survived. So that's definitely one option. Another option is that this is something which hasn't happened before the arrival of the Alien Covenant crew, but actually after. And I ever think, well, nobody's there after. Well, let's just say that another crew may be coming to look for the original one, homing in on like Last Known Place Destination, you know, where they sort of diverted to the planet with the story of they're going to the colony. Maybe this is sort of learned by Weyland-Yutani or whatever company, and they sort of backtrack like, you know, okay, what went wrong here? And they're trying to travel back. They end up there. Eggs again, they get infected. I mean, yeah, we are rehashing sort of the same storyline over and over again, but definitely possible that it happens afterwards. Someone just goes there, but now no one's there to tell them that, you know, the eggs are engineered or whatever. They just find weird eggs on the planet. Here is where my mind wanders, because I don't think that these options that we have been talking about, I don't think that's the thing. I think that there's a possibility which we have missed entirely. And this is where we get back to the flute scene. The space jockey is not a human. It's not an engineer. It's someone who's been there in plain sight, but we just haven't considered him as a potential space jockey. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Walter. Now, I know what you're thinking. Walter is an android. He probably shouldn't be able to have a chest burster. Plus, the fact that he's dead, that sort of put a weird sort of spike in the coffin. But do we actually know that he's dead? We do see David and Walter have like this big fight scene, but we don't actually see David killing Walter. Now, obviously, this is, you know, easily be explained by the fact that, well, then the whole sort of plot twist with, you know, David is posing as Walter, we wouldn't be able to accomplish that if we know that Walter has survived. Well, true. But this whole sort of plot twist also creates the interesting aspect. Let's just assume that he doesn't die. I don't remember the exact line, but David does tell Walter in like the whole sort of fight scene, do you want to come over to my side, or do you want to be like, you know, a slave to humans, or I forget the whole, but that's sort of like the idea of it. We don't really get an answer, we just assume that he kills him and takes his place. Let's believe for a minute that Walter has survived, and he is left on the planet. David travels off with the colonists, you know, doing his thing, whatever happens in the new installment. So Walter is now left on the planet. Maybe he continues David's experiment. Maybe that's how we end up with an alien queen. Because we don't really know whether or not David has sort of created the alien queen already, but from the looks of it, I don't think he has, because the burster that we see in Alien Covenant is sort of like a miniaturized version of an alien. It doesn't look like the classic burster. So it feels like we are somewhere maybe later in evolution, or earlier, presumably. I mean, take your pick. It could be an earlier creation of David's, or it could be a later creation of Walter's, continuing David's work. Now, this could also mean that, you know, Walter somehow creates a sort of alien hybrid that can live inside him. We don't know everything about Walter, but we do know that Walter is in fact a later model of android than David is. Maybe he has more of a cyborg-like quality, that there are more parts that are actually human. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the exact mechanics, but let's play with the idea that he creates an alien queen or some sort of embryo that can nest inside him, which is also sort of foreshadowed by the ending of Alien Covenant, where David sort of has like this weird, what's it called? Facehugger embryo, which is a new thing. I was sort of thinking like, well, we've seen that before. No, we haven't. We have seen and talked about embryos that the facehuggers lay in people's clothes, but that's an embryo for the chest burster, not an embryo for the facehugger. A facehugger embryo is something new entirely. So let's assume that Walter continues to work biomechanic whatever hybrid that can live inside him, and then he takes a ship, and with this he sort of makes the ultimate sacrifice, sort of sacrifices himself as the chestburster kills him, but he knows that, you know, with all the eggs it will be creating, he will sort of spread the alien genes further. I mean, we don't know what happens on the derelict ship or why, but I think, and this is where things get interesting, the flute scene. I think we're missing the point of this entirely, and here's why. Where have we ever seen a flute in the Alien franchise? Throughout all the films, has this ever been mentioned before? I didn't think about it either, until a couple of days after I saw the movie. I think I was actually lying in bed trying to go to sleep, and my mind wandered, and then it just hit me. How did David start up the alien ship in Prometheus? Do you remember? He does it by blowing on a flute. That's the key. What do you think about the flute scene now? I think that the flute scene, this is why it's pivotal. David teaches Walter how to play the flute. It's mentioned very briefly, and it's such a weird scene. People don't think about it, they laugh, they're all thinking, why are they putting this gay stuff in here? But David explains it, or Walter explains it, saying that, you know, he can't play the flute. It's something in his programming. They are different models. I don't remember the exact mechanics, but he sort of says that, no, I can't do it. And then David teaches him. Why does he want to teach Walter how to play the flute? Because this is the only way. Maybe it's not planned, maybe that's not his intention, but this part of the story is critical because this allows Walter to activate the spaceship. He wouldn't have been able to do this because he wouldn't have been able to create a flute song or whatever if David hadn't taught it to him. There's any number of ships on the homeworld. I mean, we're gonna have to assume that it's their homeworld. So now, Walter is alive. He has the potential to maneuver an alien craft. He can also continue the experiments. He has it all. He has these three things, or he can fill up a ship with eggs if he wants to. I don't think he does. It seems sort of like, you know, counterproductive. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely possible. And I also, you know, last thing to mention, let's say that he creates sort of like a weirdo new hybrid. This could sort of explain why the alien queen at this stage looks so much different than the typical aliens that we see. Obviously it's a queen, but still, let's say that this queen is sort of a splice between the alien sort of genetics and Walter's sort of half-man, half-cyborg type body, if that's the case. This could explain why the queen is so more shielded and mechanical looking than the more classic warrior type aliens that we see. Not saying that a queen can't come from a human, you know, that's been talked about, but that's something that's later in the evolution. So maybe this was the start of that, like, you know, he created some sort of hybrid that came from a cross between an android and an alien queen chestburster, and then we end up down the line. I mean, it's evolution, so anything can happen, and they tend to mess with our heads when it comes to the evolution of the alien creatures and the goo and whatnot. So that's my theory. I believe that Walter is in fact the space jockey, or in any case that Walter is alive and he is the key as to what will happen and how they will eventually find the derelict ship in the original Alien film. I don't think David has any part of that anymore. I think that it's all Walter's doing, and it's something we will learn in the upcoming movie. But anyway, that is it for me today. Let me know what you think about this theory. Am I totally wrong, or has this sort of raised ideas that you think about? Thank you very much for watching, and as usual, I hope to see you all next time.